Hello, this is Lee Christian with Code Red DVD, and I'm here with director and co-screenwriter Willard Huyck. And
hello, this is Willard.
And producer and co-screenwriter Gloria Katz.
This is Gloria.
And as long as I'm doing introductions, this gentleman on screen here is a young director, or a young Walter Hill anyway. How did he end up in this film?
Well, Walter was a friend of ours. I'm trying to remember. At the time, he may have still been an assistant director. So we just asked him. We asked a lot of friends to be in the movie.
Well, this would have been around the time that he wrote The Getaway for Sam Peckinpah.
Yeah, actually, he started as a writer. You're right. So he was a writer here, and he also was in the assistant director's program at one point.
What is the story behind this opening prologue here? Because it seems a little disconnected from the rest of the film.
Well, it's just supposed to be showing what's happening in Point Doom. It's a teaser. It's, I guess you could say it's like James Bond. It has another story
Borrowing
in the
from Cubby
beginning.
Broccoli.
That's right.
The little girl is our editor, Billy Weber's cousin.
In case it's interesting.
And he was an associate editor on this, right?
Yes.
So appropriate she'd be cutting.
Yeah, absolutely.
When was this film shot?
1971.
Okay, and because the copyright date on this print anyway, and what it's usually regarded as is a 1973 film.
Yeah.
But shot over how long of a period in 71?
It was shot probably 2 months, 8 weeks, something like that.
And by the way, the credits are divided up into two sections here. Was there a reason for that?
We didn't do any of the, post-production credits or anything. We actually only got as far as a first cut of the movie, and the investors had run out of money by that time, and were fighting each other. So we sneaked the work print out of Technicolor and edited it to a certain point, and then we couldn't get any more financing. Eventually, we gave it back to the original investors, and they did all, they finished the film doing credits and titles, and there were things that were never shot that are still missing, but they just were never shot.
Well, we definitely want to get onto those, but I wanted to, this is Mariana Hill right
This
here.
is Mariana Hill, and I think that was a hall at Technicolor. It was somewhere.
And well, this shot is really nice. I mean, it sets everything up for the rest. It sets the look up for the rest of the film. Your brother shot this film, Gloria. Stephen?
Yes, my brother shot the film. He was then working with a lot of low budget.
For Roger Corman.
For Roger Corman and for other ways that, young cinematographers would start their careers.
He had done things, I guess, with Joe Viola and Angels Hard as They Come, that kind of movie.
He actually, one of the actors in this that we're going to see shortly here, Charles Deercop, was in that.
He may have suggested Charlie, yeah.
So, and getting on to this, I believe she's going to be driving here towards the gas station. And one thing that everybody's noticed about this film is the blue and red color scheme that seems prevalent throughout the film. I noticed, you did the color correcting on it also. Was that something that you had, was there a special meaning behind that?
No, there wasn't, actually. It just sort of turned out to be, I guess, the predominant colors in the movie.
It even ends up coming up in this gas station coming up here even in the mobile sign logo.
Yeah. Well, the gas station was sort of an homage to Ed Ruscha. It was just a beautiful gas station in the middle of nowhere, but it looked great in scope. So.
Getting on to that, by the way. Oh, and her character name Arletty, for the record, is that a homage to the actress Arletty in Children of Paradise?
Yes, it's a very pretentious sort of film school homage to Children of Paradise.
Now, where was this gas station at, by the way?
I think it was way out. It was Agoura, somewhere, what is that, northwest of Los Angeles.
Did you have a lot of problems securing locations, given the...
Not really. The only problems, we had very little money, and it was non-union film. So, we did the best we could as far as locations. I think that was Morgan Fisher's car, the editor's car she's driving. Obviously there's a lot of that when you're making a movie at this budget. We shot it, I think, for $80,000. We were supposed to get $100,000, but the Texas investors who came up with the money, one of them re-roofed his house, and so we had $15,000 less than we thought we had.
The other thing is we didn't have trouble getting locations, but we had trouble paying for locations. And, when you're dealing with these really low-budget movies, you have all kinds of problems with your checks clearing. And are you going to be able to shoot on the location before your check bounces?
Well, on that note, I hate to bring it... Oh, and we got Benny Robinson coming up here. But you told a funny story at UCLA about the check writing, how you avoided getting prosecuted for the check.
Oh, well, yes, eventually I didn't intentionally mean to bounce the checks. And it was that the investors were supposed to cover the checks that I was writing, but they didn't cover them. So I was left with having bounced all this money. So I had to go to small claims court, and we called our attorney at that time, who was actually representing us for no money whatsoever. And I said, could you please go with me? And he said, no, just go by yourself. And remember, I was very, very young, and say you're insane. And you had no idea what you were doing. So that's what they let me off, yeah.
At that time, Gloria looked like she was about 12, so she went in her little miniskirt and started crying. And they finally, although later on we had a problem because unfortunately we also the checks had bounced for the cops who were working on the film. And Michael Greer, who was our lead, this must have been 6 months later, called and desperately. He had been arrested or stopped for some kind of traffic violation or something. And unfortunately, the cops recognized him, and they had worked on the movie. So they took him in and threatened to put him in jail unless he called us and got their money. So Michael called, and I said, okay, how much is it? And we kept him from going to jail.
Those are the two cops that we see later on in the film. Is that
No,
correct?
the two cops we see in the film, one is my brother and one is, who was it? It was RJ, wasn't it? No.
It was the production manager,
Yeah, it was
I
the
think.
production manager.
By the way, was that Walter Hill that reprising his role from the intro that was laying in the back of the truck with his throat slit?
No, it was, yes, it was. I'm sorry.
Okay.
It was Walter, yes.
You got permission to use this hydraulic here?
Oh, yeah, we rented the whole, and I think the other person in the back of the truck was Lance Richburg, who was an artist.
Yes.
That's me. I had a lot of hair then.
It's your Hitchcock cameo.
Yeah. Well, there's several. I played multiple roles.
What was, by the way, this is about as extreme as the gore in the film gets. At this time, there was usually a tendency to shoot for a PG rating for a horror film. Were you shooting for a particular rating on this?
I think this was before PG ratings.
Well, this was in the rating system was established in '68.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if they had PG. I
well,
don't
PG,
think.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or no, it was GP at the time.
Yeah, I'm not sure we were thinking about ratings.
Okay.
Actually.
And here we are at her father's house, the Joseph Long estate, if you will.
Yeah, this was a house out at Malibu that we got somehow. I don't know. The rating thing's interesting because later when we did Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, there was that's when they came up with a brand new rating, PG-13. Yeah.
Was this, and here we got this blue haze here. Obviously, it's got to be intentional. I mean,
well, that's Hollywood night. You just put blue filters on.
Pre-HMI lighting.
Yeah, that's absolutely, yeah. This is blue for night.
Do you happen to recall the owners of the house? Because you went in and, I mean, we're going to see these murals.
No, the interior has
exteriors.
nothing to do with this. This is the only thing that was shot here. The the interiors of the house were shot miles away in Echo Park, an old house in Echo Park. But we sort of matched that round window there. This we matched, and so there's several scenes where in the house they're sitting at a round table.
Jack Fisk, who was the art director, I think my brother had worked with him on several low-budget Corman movies, so he suggested Jack. And then Joan Mosine, who did the paintings, was my college roommate.
So now she's entering into the Echo Park house. We're not at the beach anymore.
Okay. It's interesting you should mention Jack Fisk, because both the people that you mentioned, both he and Joan worked on, and a few other people on this worked on Badlands.
Yes,
And
Billy
Billy.
Weber. Billy Weber cut it.
Yeah. And, well, Jack Fisk ended up marrying Sissy Spacek,
Yeah.
too.
No, Jack has worked with...
David Lynch and Terrence Malick.
Yeah, and Terry Malick from Badlands on. I mean, he's worked on a lot of movies with him.
He's worked with Brian De Palma a few times.
He directed, too, actually. Directed a movie with Sissy.
Was that The River?
I forget the
Or,
name.
I mean, not The River.
Ragman's daughter.
Ragman's
Ragman's
daughter.
Daughter.
Yeah.
I love that mural with the dog there, because in the first shot it looks like it's part of the painting, and then as you...
Yeah.
There's also something, the sound here, there's a little bit of teasing with the sound effect. You can hear a dog panting, and you can hear a bird chirping on the soundtrack here.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether we got that far or whether that was put in...
But I think the editor who, after we lost control of the movie, the editor who took over, Scott Conrad, didn't he edit Rocky or something?
Yes, he won an
Yeah.
Academy Award
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah, we never met him.
So which editor did you work with an editor?
Yeah, we worked a lot. I mean, we did the whole, first cut, which isn't much different, except it wasn't ever mixed properly or anything. But we worked, the two editors were Morgan Fisher and Billy Weber. And then when the film was taken back by the original investors, they hired a company, and Scott Conrad, finished, he did all the sound work, I guess, and everything.
What do you recall about... Now, Joan Mosine was the art director who actually did all of the murals, is that correct?
Yes. Joan was my roommate, and we went to UCLA together. I was in film, she was in fine arts, and she was a painter. And so we asked her to do these murals. And she did them essentially, I think, taking photographs and projecting them on the walls and then painting them.
We said the idea was that we wanted ghouls to sort of invade the San Fernando Valley, so we wanted to try to make it look as much like that as possible. Because at the time, Norman Mailer had said if there were ever a catastrophe that destroyed the world, it would all be rebuilt to look just like the San Fernando Valley. So we took that as a cue and tried to... Most of the murals are based on things she shot in Studio City and places like that.
But I can see in there was the way the murals are constructed, it also had to do with kind of the Los Angeles art scene at that time, because you sort of see the influence of Ed Ruscha in the construction of the murals.
And actually, our still photographer was a well-known Los Angeles photographer.
He's still working to this day, actually.
Well, no, Judy Fiskin
Okay.
shot stills, and she actually did stills that were sort of like Ruscha, later on, that were like Ed Ruscha.
Back into the daylight.
And outside here, anything or any memories of these beach scenes? You've got a few of them in the movie, and they
No, not really. I don't remember. They were shot somewhere, in LA coast, Malibu, I guess.
I drove into town later. It was hot already. I saw
Now, here's the art gallery. She's going to find out about
This
part of
was,
it.
I think, it was Melrose, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
on Melrose.
Melrose Place.
It's an interesting idea to have a blind woman working in an art gallery.
Yes, we thought sort of amusing. It looks like she's blind from the art on the walls. The art was supposed to be really tacky because later on somebody makes a comment about the kind of art. It's not the kind of art you see in this town or something. That's Morgan Fisher, who was one of the editors and went on to fame as a experimental filmmaker and teacher at Cal Arts.
Well, I meant I'm looking for him. And I thought maybe you knew him.
Were all of these paintings that are in the background, this is an actual art gallery?
I think it was. I think that, yeah. And
We
were-
didn't have money to dress anything.
No. So we were pleased by the tackiness of the whole.
Looking for your father, which means some people do like his brand of art.
Who were they?
Now, the narration throughout this film, how much of that was actually scripted, or was some of that...
No, it was all scripted.
Okay.
There was a scene missing here where actually after she leaves the art gallery, because I was just looking through Judy Fiskin's stills, there was a special presentation at the LA County Museum the other night, and so we surprised Judy by bringing her a lot of stills from her first job of ghouls, eating raw meat and things. But there's a scene where he goes outside and starts to burn other paintings in the back behind the art gallery, and what he's supposed to have been doing is burning her father's paintings, trying to cover up the fact that he was actually here. I don't know. It got cut out. Either they cut it out or we cut it.
But it was shot.
Yeah.
This is Elisha Cook Jr. I remember you telling a story when during the screening at UCLA that he may have had a comment about looking directly at the camera for the shot.
Yeah. Elijah said, this is so strange. The first time in my career a director has ever told me to look into the camera. And we had originally, when we were casting this, interviewed Hank Warden from the John Ford movies. And I love the idea of him playing this sort of crazy character who talks about what has happened off screen. And he was excited. He was much older than Hank Warden, and he was wanted to do it. Then we got a call, and he was really upset. He said, "I'm sorry, I can't do this movie." And we said, "Well, what happened?" And he said, "Well, my wife read the script, and she decided it was salacious and didn't like the two guys, the guy with the two girls, and she was very upset." So he said, "I'm going to have to withdraw." So then we got Elijah Cook Jr., who was great. He was fun to work with.
How did you go about approaching him or deciding on him?
I think we had a casting agent who was just brave and started calling his agent and said, would he like to do a small role?
And he's got this monologue here. It's really nice to actually have a veteran character actor do a monologue.
Yeah.
It's the familiarity that they bring to.
That's right.
The thing that was really insane about the scene, it's inside a motel room. And for some reason, we couldn't find the perfect motel room anywhere in Los Angeles.
That's what they told us, at least.
And so we drove to Anaheim to shoot inside this motel room, which I have no idea why.
It took us forever. We were out by Disneyland. We kept saying, why are we here? I mean, there must be a motel 5 minutes away from where we shot yesterday.
No hotels in Hollywood?
No.
No, it was one of those.
I think what finally happened is the location manager admitted that he had gone with his parents, he was very young, to Disneyland and had seen it.
No,
So-
I think we chose it because of the sign outside.
No, the sign's not even this
We don't-
motel.
Oh.
No, that's another motel. No, plus the fact the curtains, we could have been anywhere. The curtains are drawn. So everybody's complaining we're in Anaheim.
Well, plus you're also shooting next to Disneyland. There must have been a bunch of tourists out.
Oh, it was terrible. Everything about it was terrible. It was hot, and we shot all night. And, we made it through the movie, actually, on speed, on amphetamines. Our production assistant had these little pills that made us all feel great, and we just kept working and working.
Cheryl Stein.
No, it was Candy.
A candy.
It was a perfect
Appropriate.
name. Yeah.
Oh, also, we didn't have really a casting agent. We just had it. My friend Alan
Oh, that
Howard
was
from
it. He made the
from
calls.
film school, and so we would just think, oh, who would be really great for this, and so Elijah Cook, so that Alan would just call,
Cold call.
yes, and pretend like we were a legitimate production.
Did you have any spectators outside watching all of this while you were shooting?
No, it was usually so boring we didn't even get spectators. I mean, and it was a very small. It was like a student film, really, except we had a big camera.
Nobody wandering by saying, "Hey, that's a guy
Yeah.
from Maltese Falcon and House on
That's
Haunted
right.
Hill."
I mean, the only reason it's in scope is because it was Technoscope, and in those days, raw stock on a film that cost $80,000 was a major expense. And so by shooting in Technoscope, you got twice as much film and a scope, aspect ratio, which made the movie look better, which is why actually George shot in Technoscope on American Graffiti.
Yeah.
And the French had Franscope, which was a similar thing. So, just to save money, you got twice as much film that way. But everything was essentially a blow-up after that, so grain was a problem.
I was wondering about that because both films, this and American Graffiti, were in Technoscope.
In Technoscope. And with Graffiti, it was ridiculous because not only was it in Technoscope, but they insisted on opening at the Cinerama Dome. So you had a Technoscope film that looked like amoebas. It looked like a billion amoebas on the screen.
16 millimeter blow up.
Yeah, it was awful.
We should make note, by the way, of Michael Greer and Anitra Ford and Joy Bang, who we just saw in that previous
Yes.
scene.
Michael, this was his first straight role. He was actually a female impersonator, and for some reason we thought that he could break out as a straight actor. But he did a valiant job and had that sort of effete, whatever he was, Portuguese kind of quality.
What do you recall about working with Anitra Ford and Joy Bang?
Oh, they were fun. They were like Don Quixote and Sancho Panza in size. I mean, Anitra was very big, and Joy was very little. And Joy Bang is actually her real name. Her name is Joy, and she married a Dutchman whose name was Bang, B-A-N-G, and she became Joy Bang. And Anitra, who came to a reunion we had for this movie 4 years ago, is an artist living up in Santa Barbara, I think. It still looks beautiful. They were both fun. I mean, they were great. Anitra, there's Anitra.
Yeah, she was on The Price is Right.
Well, she
just
did
after
that.
this.
Yeah, she was on The Price is Right, but during the shooting, it was really exciting because she appeared on the Johnny Carson show, and in those days, Johnny Carson would have beautiful women come out and hand him the product that they were going to the commercial for. And then he'd interview them. So we were all watching, and she got to go on and say that she was making this movie. And he said, "Oh, what are you doing in it?" And she says, "Well, I get eaten in a supermarket." So, of course, he started laughing. The whole audience went berserk. It was a highlight of our shoot.
What is interesting to me is how we ever could afford the white suit that Michael Greer is wearing.
It's the most expensive thing in the picture.
Well, he drives a Mercedes, we see.
Well, that's
later
my
on.
dad's.
Okay.
That was my dad's car, but the suit was unbelievably expensive.
I would like to point out that the Afghan on the bed was something that I crocheted sometime when I was going out of my mind.
And if you look closely, it has the red and blue in it, too.
That's right, which obviously is a thematic something.
Whose idea was it to have those suspended beds? The record players.
Oh,
on
you
the
know, the suspended bed, I believe, was there.
Really?
I had this weird feeling that it was there, yeah. But I could be wrong. I think those were Supreme Court justices.
Really?
Yeah, and there's a lone assassin somewhere, that yellow picture, in the other room. I think it's not Leah, it may be Leah Harvey. It was somebody, some awful assassin.
It looks like Lee Harvey Oswald
Yeah.
now that you mention it.
It may have been.
So,
And that's Joy.
yeah. Speaking of the murals, by the way, this is the first time that those really start getting incorporated into the composition of the shots.
Yeah, we liked that idea, and actually we suggested it for Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, that in one, I think that is Lee.
I let them
In, there's a scene where the thuggees, you see a painting on the wall, and the thuggies step out of it, in effect. Small thing.
By the way, I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
No.
Well, I know that we have a bathtub scene coming up, but actually, one thing I was wondering about is this film was not SAG, and I understand that that's at the time. You're using SAG actors: Royal Dano, Elisha Cook Jr., obviously Mariana Hill, and I believe that Michael Greer would have been SAG at the time. But how did you get around that?
Well, we may have. I don't remember, but actually, with SAG, if you pay them SAG wages or minimums, they don't care if it's non-union or union.
Didn't at the time.
Yeah, as long as it's their union. So I'm not sure whether we. I don't.
I'm
remember.
sure everybody worked for scale.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, when you do these independent films, you're so below the radar, nobody bothers you, especially in 1971.
But we probably paid SAG minimum.
Well, that's changed these days. I would actually have to be signatory.
You mean the whole movie
order,
would have to? Yeah. Was
there ever Joy Bang has a bathtub scene coming up? There's not really a lot of nudity in this film. Did you ever?
I don't know whether we thought we wanted more, or I don't think we planned on any more than that.
I also think in that time frame, it wasn't actually that common as it is today.
Yeah,
I mean, it would be very.
Or even a few years later. Yeah.
Laura's quite the art critic. She used to model.
By the way, on the Technicolor thing, or I mean Technoscope thing, you were committed to using the downfall of that. I mean, you got the film stock. You spent half the money effectively on the film stock because of the Technicolor, the 2-perf Technicolor or Technoscope process, but you were committed to using Technicolor as the.
That's our China. I just realized.
Yes, that's our wedding dishes.
Yes, but Technicolor in those days, it was amazing. We didn't understand why, but they were unbelievably gracious, and they welcomed us. They were thrilled to get the movie, and then we found out because nobody was using this format, and they had this big Technoscope printer that was sitting there going to waste. So they gave us editing rooms at Technicolor before we stole the work print, and you know, we had dailies at Technicolor, and it was like a real film. But after this, we heard they sold everything to China, the whole Technoscope printing outfit.
Yeah, that's actually true. I don't know if it's still in China, but I know that if you had to use it beyond that point, because they did away with it, I think in the mid-'70s.
Yeah.
Thereabouts. Blue for Night again.
Yeah.
What about your costume designer on this? You had two people credited as costume designers anyway. One was Rosanna Norton.
Rosanna Norton really designed, I think, Mariana Hill's maybe, and worked on Michael's look. And then Jody, the other is Jody Tillen, right?
Yeah.
She was there every day and you know, did everybody else. But Rosanna was really more the designer, and Jody really worked the set.
And she's had a very elaborate career. She worked on Lamora, Child's Tale of the Supernatural. She also worked on Badlands as well.
Yeah, Rosanna was married to Bill Norton, who's also was a director and actually directed more American Graffiti.
American Graffiti.
Yeah. And you went to film school with Bill,
Yes,
and
I
at that
went to
time
film
he was married to Rosanna. So it was all very incestuous.
We also had a lot of trouble with that ivy in the background because we kept having to clip it on fresh every day because it would just wilt on us.
Can't even see it.
I know.
Well, the DVD, I think this is, for those watching, I think we're watching a VHS interpretation of our telecine, so. In this scene, there's that little bit of sexual innuendo between these
it's pretty
two.
lame.
They've got that line.
Yeah, it's pretty lame.
Unzip
Something
him.
about a zipper, yeah.
You don't unzip a man and tell him to go to
Something like that, yeah.
There wasn't much of a romance between these two. And come to think of it, all of the characters are pretty cold to one another.
Well, they're about to be ghouls.
So what some of the ambiguities as far as the ghouls go, there's a little bit of uncertainty as to what the what the story is on that, whether they're zombies, vampires, etc., etc.
Yeah, I don't think we ever figured that out.
So that was...
They weren't happy people, we knew that. And they seemed to eat other people. So they were at least ghoulish.
I don't think at this time we were tremendously interested, actually, in the relationship between the characters. I think the whole picture is just designed to sort of set this Lovecraftian mood. So it's, in a way, looking at it now, it was like we had seen Evita Loney too many times. Because it really is everything about it, the colors, the composition, the use of the actors, it's all very, very surreal and dreamlike.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, right from the beginning, when she's in an insane asylum, it sets up the ambiguity as to whether or not what were actually the flashback, the accuracy of it, if it ever happened at all.
I don't know if it's Evita Loney or La Ventura.
I think maybe it's
Yeah,
Evita Loney is the wrong movie.
Yes, that's a
It's
black and white
Ventura.
film. Yeah, it's more like Antonioni than...
Oh.
In our dreams.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned Lovecraft. That was obviously a great, big inspiration for this film, was it not?
Yes, I was a Lovecraft fan when I was growing up and had read everything by him. So it has, yes, Lovecraftian undertone.
There's a dreamlike quality to everything, as you were mentioning.
Yeah.
Even the gas station attendant, after he sees the bodies in the back of the pickup, he just goes right back to work.
Yeah.
There's no getting the hell out of there, calling the police or anything.
Yeah, no, it's very strange. It's like everybody's on Quaaludes, when in reality we were on methamphetamine or something.
By the way, that's the weirdest place for people to be painted on the wall, is right
In the toilet?
bathtub.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's really designed as a realistic
No.
film. I mean, everything is sort of hyperrealism.
Bad dream.
By the way, was there any reason that that Tom spelled in the credits? Or it's been noted as spelled with an H.
Tom, a friend of ours was Tom Anderson, who was also a experimental filmmaker, and he made a wonderful movie called Homage to Muybridge, about Edward Muybridge and his studies in animal locomotion, and ended up becoming a filmmaker and a film teacher too. He was just a friend of ours, so we used his name, which was Tom, Thom, but we ran into problems because when we were casting it, all these beautiful young girls would come in to play Arletty, and whenever they got to a certain point in the script, we'd all start nudging each other because inevitably they would all go Thom.
Oh, by the way, whose idea was it that you've got this kind of skeletal housing development?
Yeah, we thought
That's great.
Yeah, we liked that. It was an unfinished housing track we found.
Did we shoot the inserts? I don't remember shooting inserts.
No, I think the moons may have been added. Unless Morgan may have found some stock footage, but yeah, I don't think we shot the moons.
And I don't remember shooting the birds flying over the ocean in the previous
No, that
shot.
was us.
That was us?
Yeah, I actually remember that.
The waiting at the beach.
Brown pelican.
I love her getting into the truck because there are about 20 red flags as to why she shouldn't.
Yeah.
And it looks like she's almost under a spell, and then, oh, what the hell?
Yeah, it's a long walk to Ralph's Market.
You can,
Now, why Wagner or Wagner?
Well, actually, Benny, as we were rehearsing it, kept saying Wagner, and people kept saying to me, "Are you going to tell him it's Wagner?" And I said, "No, I like Wagner." It sounds great when it's wet.
It goes well with eating a mouse.
Yeah, that's right.
I found a lot of them.
A lot of what?
Why'd you select that music, though? Is that...
It's Wagner.
Well, I mean, is it just because you like Wagner?
Well, I don't know. It seemed sort of insane. Benny was actually an African American. It's hard to tell, but he and an albino, and so we sent out a casting call for albinos, and found that there's a lot of black albinos. Strangely enough.
Got another, if you'd like.
No, thank you. I'm just.
Obviously, he didn't need the mouse, but any memories on
No,
this?
but it worked
on
great.
shooting this?
Yeah. No,
Yeah, it
Anitra
works.
was a little upset.
Very nice.
We had a young, he was about 14, I think, a guy who did all our blood. We called him Bud Blood, and his name was Bud something, I forget. But he was really into these kind of cheapo special effects.
Well, I don't think he had ever
Never done a movie.
done a movie or never done anything.
He was thrilled.
He was just like a kid out of high school whose dream in life was to do blood and special,
Yeah.
cosmetic effects.
This is a motel on 3rd Street in Los Angeles.
Is that Bud Miller?
Yes.
Yes.
That
Yeah,
was
he worked
Bud.
on Black Snake, actually. the
Oh,
Russ
he had a
Meyer
movie
film.
credit.
Yeah. Well, he worked for Russ Meyer right around the same time on Black Snake.
Now, see, Russ Meyer had a lot of nudity and things. Yeah, that was a different. I forgot. Where is she going?
Well, she ends up going to Ralph's, but I was going to ask you
on
about
her way, she goes to the motel. I guess she's just looking for people in general.
some of these locations. Was that just the way, I mean, at
Well,
this
we
time?
were trying to find different, like a motel, like a car lot, like.
But I noticed it has this really wonderful retro 60s look.
It does, yeah.
Yeah,
and that's
which is
been
very
commented on,
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it goes with when you start seeing the zombies. The majority of them are elderly. Which I remember Mark Huyck from Beat the Geeks was at that screening at the Silent Movie Theater. And
Yeah.
asked you, was that about the old taking revenge on the young? But you had an interesting response to that about why you ended up casting who you did as zombies.
Well, we just had, at the time, we were sort of in an economic downturn as we are at the moment. And when we put out a call for, non-union extra zombies, we started getting all these aerospace workers who were out of work, and they'd come with their suit and tie and their little, slide rules and pocket protectors. And so you'll notice a lot of these guys were, they were from Caltech probably, and on NASA projects, and they'd gotten laid off, and so they became ghouls in our movie.
So
And
those are out
also
of work
because a
NASA.
lot of the people are the ghouls are also our relatives, so they were older.
Now, this is obviously one of the more famous set pieces of the film, but the Ralphs that you shot at, which Ralphs is that, by the way?
I think it's out in Burbank. It's not the one people have asked on Ventura Boulevard in Coldwater. It's
There's one on Victory and Buena Vista.
that could be it.
Okay.
Yeah. That's Billy Weber, the editor,
Oh,
in case anyone was looking for him.
by the way, she was also in Invasion of the Bee Girls, now that I think of it.
She was really beautiful, and she's very sweet. Those weren't her breasts, though. She had absolutely no breasts, and Jody made her breasts.
Wardrobe?
Yeah,
This was before silicone.
yeah. Thank God she didn't do it.
So did you get open access to their meat department there?
We had to buy the meat. They actually, once we started, we thought maybe we wouldn't, but once they started picking it up and eating it, and because a lot of these guys were out of work, they were serious.
You didn't have problems getting
Some-
NASA scientists to eat raw meat?
No, somebody came up to me and said they're really eating the meat.
You look grossed out, Gloria.
I
Now
am
wait,
so
this
grossed out.
this is an important shot because this is my only second unit shot. Right, it's coming up. She runs to the door, and the turnstile doesn't work. She climbs over. The door doesn't work, and right now, there. That shot, Morgan called me after we had spent 18,000 hours here. shooting this sequence, and said, "You're missing a shot." And so I went crazy and said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "You're missing the shot where she runs up to the door and she stamps on the automatic door opener." So I said, "Morgan, if you want that shot, you come out and shoot it, because I'm not shooting the shot." So he said, "Really?" So he was really thrilled, and he came out, and I gave him a Nitra and a camera, and he went over and shot that shot where her feet are going up and down on the automatic door opener. And in later years, he loved the idea, so he made a movie called Inserts. And I think it was so he could put that shot in it and say he had shot that one. But he had found a lot of inserts at an old lab, and he put them together in this movie. It's really wonderful, because it's nothing but inserts of feet pushing down on gas pedals, and, pots boiling on the stove, and newspapers, and that shot. So when Morgan had a screening of his own films about 10 years ago in New York, and he was very excited, and he was being interviewed by the Village Voice, and he said the first question they asked him is it true you worked on Messiah of Evil? And he was able to explain that, yes, and he shot some second unit.
I think he was on the jury at Sundance in 95.
Yeah, probably.
By the way, I forgot to ask it, that establishment shot at Ralph's, was that a crane shot?
Did it move?
It didn't move.
No, I think we had a crane, because we used it. Yes, we did have a crane. We used it at the unfinished housing track. There's that shot of her when she finally gets into the pickup truck. It was a cherry picker, it wasn't a crane. It was, for washing windows or whatever they used.
I assume Ralph's was closed at the time.
Yes, we managed to get Ralph's for one night after hours.
Can't we go, Tom? It's not that I care. It's just that I'm scared.
What?
I don't know.
I tried to sleep. And I felt
The way that scene starts off, it almost seems as though Royal Dano's actually coming out of the radio there. Or the voiceover of Royal
Oh,
Dano.
yeah.
about to awaken.
What do you recall about, we'll get on to him later on, of course, but doing the voiceovers when he was coming in to record his voiceovers?
I don't think he came in. We did everything. All of this was supposed to be temp. And so we would just, at the end of a day, say, the editors need this. It's just temporary, and read it. So we'd sit on the set and do these wild recordings. They ultimately were used in the movie because they didn't want to spend any money to, redo them.
The composer for this, by the way, Philan? I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly.
We had
Philan
nothing to
Bishop.
do with the music.
Oh, no?
No.
Okay.
We when we had finished our cut and tried to sell it and couldn't raise any further money, we had put in great, Bernard Herrmann, whatever great
Temp
music,
tracks.
temp tracks we could find. So, the music we had nothing to do with.
Okay. So what did end up getting left out of this?
Well, the end was supposed to be much more elaborate. That's really basically what's missing. When he came and there were supposed to be more people on the beach, and there's a scene where he puts that horrible scar on. I don't think that's in the movie. Maybe it is. Where he puts his hand on her face, and it burns this scar of his handprint on her.
No, that's not in the film.
Because at the end, I don't know if you see it, but she has this handprint on the side of her face. And he comes out of the water and puts his hand on her. I think we shot part of it, and it smoked and so forth. And I guess it's no longer in the movie.
We got closed down. I remember I was making frantic calls to everyone I knew to appear on the beach because we wanted like 300 people or something.
Yeah.
And that's when we got shut down.
But we shot the scene where he puts his hand on her face, but I guess they couldn't cut it together without the other stuff or something. They sort of created an ending out of at the end of the movie. I noticed that there are sort of a reprise of all the highlights as she's sitting there
Which was not something that you did.
No,
okay.
no, we
the
hadn't planned.
montage.
Yeah, there's a montage of the favorite hits.
So was there more? So I assume then that there was more explanation as to the origin of the Messiah himself.
Yeah, there was, which I can't remember, but it was, it was explained somewhat more like
Losing control.
the end of Psycho or something, or the end of Invasion of the Body Snatch.
But still there with
Nobody
the
believes me.
sunrise. I think
By the way, did you ever see Let's Scare Jessica to Death?
by someone's
No.
evil that's turning me into
No.
Is that from the same time period?
That was actually released in '71.
Was it?
But it's a the feel and also the story itself are very similar to
Huh.
the film. It was a Paramount release.
No.
But another film that, one that I had mentioned at the UCLA screening,
Yeah.
Carnival of Souls.
Carnival of Souls I've always heard about, and people have said it's very similar, and we haven't seen that either.
So was there much of a... Obviously, there was a lot going on internationally at the time, and that, when people look at this in that perspective, that it's a film from the early 70s, they see allegories with Vietnam or the Cold War, et cetera, pick your allegory. But was any of that intended to be implemented into the story?
Honestly, no.
Okay.
I mean, but people have read those things into it, and no, it wasn't. And actually, we weren't big horror film fans. What happened is we had an agent, because in those days they had just come up with the idea of signing people out of film school thinking they might have careers. And it was actually the beginning of the fact that some of us did. So we had an agent who was fired or quit and wanted to be a producer, so he called us and said, listen, I've met these rich Texas kids, and they want to finance a movie, but it has to be a horror movie. And we said, fine. And he said, well, do you have one? And we said, no, but we can do one. And so we wrote it quickly and made it. But it wasn't a life ambition. It was really an opportunity.
That's one thing about the film that always trips people up is, another one of these swinging beds.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's seems to want to be both horror film and also an art house film. I mean, some of these...
Yeah. Well, it was sort of like a art house film, but we had to make a horror film. And we were sort of influenced by having been film students.
Yeah, the way it's shot and the heavy narration, literary allusion, and all those things were sort of coming out of the late 60s, art film period. But we just didn't really know how to combine it with a horror film, which is what makes it so odd.
There was something that, going back to that, the Messiah thing, there was something, Michael Greer had done an interview to promote the Gay Deceivers, a film that he did before this, and he made...
That's me, too. That's another one of my roles.
This right here?
Yeah, the scuba guy.
They had picked up my father twice in town.
He had said that he was, in his next film, Messiah of Evil, he was playing the son of the devil.
Never knew where he was.
Oh,
But,
is that what he is? I'm glad somebody...
And then people reported seeing
No,
So
but it
nobody
sounds
told him
impressive.
that?
Well, no, but it probably sounded impressive to say you're playing the son of the devil.
the tide must
I
have collapsed
actually think that's why we cast him, because we wanted somebody
Who would believe it?
who was very, very odd.
That's my brother's hand.
After this is over and we get through with some paperwork, I think you should take the young lady out of town. We're not really a tourist town, and strangers only bring problems.
No. Our original title was Blood Virgin, because it sounded, like a horror film. And then as we started casting it, our assistant director friend said, I'm having trouble getting actors to come in because they think it sounds like like a, it sounds sleazy.
Porn.
Yeah, like a porn film. And so we said, okay. So we came up with a temporary title that actually we used while we were shooting the film, and that was our title, which was The Second Coming, because it was like the Yeats poem, and it was pretentious, and this is supposedly the second coming of this strange character who comes out of the water at the end. Then we had problems because people said, well, now it really sounds like a porn film, The Second Coming. But we did shoot it that way. And then when it was taken away from us, I actually think the first time it was released, it was called Dead People. And then I think later it was called Messiah of Evil. But neither of those were our title.
Well, and there was a lawsuit.
Yeah, there was a lawsuit at one point, I guess because of Dead People. What's his name?
George Romero.
George
Yeah.
Romero.
That's right.
My father called me. My father is a senior and I'm a junior, and he said, I've been served papers that somebody named George Romero is suing me for Dead People. Do you happen to know what this is about? And I said, well, don't worry about it.
Well,
just get a good lawyer, Dad. But anyway, I guess that went away. And maybe that's why they changed the title to Messiah of Evil.
Well, according to a piece in Variety, what happened was they had actually given it the title Return of the Living Dead. William Links was
that's right.
distributing it in 78.
Yeah, that's even worse.
And,
Return of the Living Dead.
Well,
yeah.
even worse was they added, this was before Romero had released Dawn of the Dead in America, and it had the title, or it had the catchphrase, when there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth.
Uh-huh.
So he sued for copyright confusion. And interestingly, as a footnote, Return of the Living Dead also was the name of a novel that John Russo had written that same year, which was his sequel to Night of the Living Dead. So a U.S. District Court in Chicago had apparently ruled against William Links, and theaters in Chicago that were playing it under the title Return of the Living Dead suddenly had to retitle it, and they just arbitrarily retitled it Scream of the Living Dead, I think it was.
Oh, really? That's a great story. It's in the Woody Allen film, I think.
Under Messiah of Evil.
Yeah, in Annie Hall when he
during the L.A. montage.
The L.A. arrival,
yeah.
where the high point of L.A. civilization is you can turn right on a red light. They pass a theater that's playing Messiah of Evil.
Yeah, and speaking of homage, you pay a homage to James Cagney in the theater. We haven't come up to the scene
but
yet.
it's not really to Cagney as much as the joke of, she's not going to make it after this.
Kiss
screening.
tomorrow, goodbye.
There was also, when they released it in one of their I think it may have been Return of the Living Dead, whatever the first release was. It said something awful on it, like from the creators of American Graffiti or something. So I called George and I said, George, we had no idea they were going to say. He thought it was funny, so it wasn't a problem.
I think I have a clipping of that here. I'll show you a little later on. Yeah, there was actually an ad, Matt, that was in papers here in L.A., and Kevin Thomas reviewed the film and it wasn't a favorable review, but he said he didn't exactly he didn't necessarily pan it, but but anyway, moving on.
Kevin Thomas had actually loved my student film. Now that we didn't shoot, The Blood Red Man, had loved a student film I did at SC, and in those days we had screenings, and it was a big deal because Kevin Thomas from the LA Times came to be a judge. So I had met him. See how he's standing like the picture. This table squeaks.
Oops.
No,
Well,
I was quite surprised to read the reviews on the internet because, and also not only because they were incredibly positive, but also we were once at a screening of films that were done by UCLA film students, and I ran into the film critic Robin Wood, who was at that time the big film critic for Sight and Sound, and I introduced myself, and he went, oh my God, the creators of Messiah of Evil, the greatest horror film from the 70s. So, I had no idea what he was talking about. But then he sent me his list of great films, and of course it was second to Mizoguchi's. This is some great Mizoguchi film.
Oh, this is actually a personal favorite of mine. I had.
That's how I knew.
Tom, why did they lie to me? Those weren't his hands. They were coarse and large. That wasn't my father.
You sure?
Yes!
Tony.
Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye is the title of a Horace
wait a minute, that's
McCoy
Gloria.
book.
That's
there
Gloria.
I am.
This is her big role.
Me as a child.
And this, of course, is one of the other big set pieces. This, which seems to pay homage to the Birds.
Yes, it definitely is.
By the way, before I forget it, we didn't make reference to the Ron McKinnon song that's on some of the prints and I believe all of the DVD releases of this. The Hold On to Love.
Yeah, somebody sent me a VHS when it first came out. So I started playing it, and I heard the music, and I went, "Oh my God, it's going to be too painful." So I never watched, but I had heard. It was funny. I mean, it had a theme song and everything.
But that was added after you had left the film.
Oh yeah. No, we didn't do any music.
Now, which theater? This is two different theaters. Between
I
you
think
two,
it's the
actually.
Fox Venice on the outside, and it was the Encore Theater, I think.
Well, also we shot the scene twice because we shot inside the Fox Venice, but it was so big we couldn't light it. So then we had to find a smaller theater.
The dailies were really dark, and you couldn't see anything. So we had to shoot the whole scene over.
At great expense. Actually, this scene, it's incredibly effective the way it's. I mean, it reminds you of the Birds, but it's really creepy, especially it's kind of when you're watching this in a theater.
Yeah.
There's a real creep factor in it. But, and this film that's coming up here, which, How the West Was Wet, or Gone with the West.
We have no idea where. I assume that the people who released it at one point also owned this movie, I guess.
That's actually true. They didn't release it here in America until 1975, but I believe that it was actually shot in the late 60s. James Caan is also in the film. That's obviously
Sammy Davis Jr., who we later met on a movie.
Oh, did you?
I had no idea he was going to be in this one, too.
Well, actually, the original, when we cut in the original movie in the scene...
The trailer,
Morgan had found in the trash bin...
That's my mother who just said that.
He had found in the trash bin some, was it On the Town or Bandwagon?
Bandwagon. He found the trailer from the Minnelli Bandwagon. And so we were playing, in our version, you have this dopey musical going on in the background, and but they obviously didn't have the rights to the trailer from Bandwagon.
Yeah, we had this very we thought it was hysterical at the time. I think it was the scene in Bandwagon when they're all in the baby carriages and singing. So we thought this was a really great counterpoint.
So you never had a movie on the screen that you had rights clearance on?
No.
Well, no, in our cut, no, we didn't have. We used, as Gloria said, that we had found this trailer. And of course, while we shot it, there was nothing on the screen. That, on the left, that was my grandmother.
This print has a 1973 copyright date, so apparently one would surmise that it was integrated into the film at that time prior to the...
Probably. We shot it in 71, and I think we worked on it into 1972, editing it and so forth. Then it was taken away, and it went away for a long time. And then somebody said, I think it was Scott Conrad called, and he said, I'm actually working on this movie you shot. And I said, you're kidding. And he said, no. And he asked us some questions and like, where were the outtakes? We said, we can't help you. And so, yeah, it came out late. When did it open? It came...
Well, according to LA Times, I think what was the release date they had? It was in 1974, actually, was the first.
Yeah, so it was quite a bit later.
Yeah. That's the first time that a release was actually noted anyway.
Yeah. I still have one of our slates, and it's I think it was August. I know it was summer but it was 71.
Just with money.
He's more astrophysicists or NASA.
And wives.
But the film came out after Graffiti was released.
Oh, yeah.
So
there's some of you guys were interviewed for the American Graffiti Laserdisc and then DVD, but there were some curious things said in that. I remember Lucas had mentioned something about, well, I had to rewrite the script because Willard and Gloria went off to write some little horror movie, as he called it, referring obviously to this.
Yeah, that had a strange history because we were actually, I'm trying to think, was George? Yeah, George was shooting THX, and he shot one scene in LA, which was it was a limbo scene. It was a white psych limbo scene where the cops are torturing Bobby Duvall, these robotic cops. And he said, why don't you come over and visit me? I've got an idea I want to talk to you guys about. And he said, as he was shooting this scene, he said, this movie's really grim. And he said, every day I keep thinking I'd like to do a movie that's really fun. So he wanted to do a movie something like his student films, which, incorporated rock and roll and things like that. And we said, great. So he, I'm trying to think the time sequence. He was finishing THX, and then we started working with him. He had a deal at United Artists because that's where THX started or something. And so we wrote the first treatment for American Graffiti, and then they said, well, this is interesting, write another treatment. So we wrote an even longer treatment. And he got the deal from United Artists to write American Graffiti, for us to write it, and he left to take THX to the Venice Film Festival.
No, to Cannes, I think.
Well, one of them. And then our ex-agent called and said, I've got this money. And we said, well, we're supposed to be writing the script for George. And he said, well, he's going to understand. He's a filmmaker. You just tell him that you can't do it. You've written the two treatments for free. So we called George in Europe, wherever he was, and said, we really can't do this. We've got this money to make our own movie. And he said, well, okay. And he wasn't real happy, obviously. So Gary Kurtz, who was the producer on Star Wars, suggested Richard Walter, who we had gone to film school with.
Yeah, Dean of Screenwriting at UCLA.
Yeah, and so we said great, because we were just, embarrassed we had quit. That's my father's car. So we took the treatments and met with Richard, and George was still in Europe. It was the first time he'd been to Europe, I think, so he and Marcia were vacationing. And I think we gave Richard some bad advice, because he said, how close do you think George wants to stay to the treatment? And we said, well, it's a treatment, so obviously you should have some freedom and do your, So he wrote the first draft from the treatment, but he changed it in ways that made George sort of crazy. And George ended up having him trying to rewrite it, and then George finally said, I'm going to write it myself. And he wrote several drafts from the original treatments and took it around and couldn't get it set up anywhere in town. The closest he ever got was American International, which thought it was like a hot rod movie. But finally, when Francis Coppola did The Godfather, Universal said if Francis puts his name on the movie as producer on American Graffiti, we'll make it, but it also has to be rewritten. So then George came back to us and said, well, guys, you're back on it. And so we, wrote the final drafts of the movie.
But that was, so we were we lost this movie. It was taken away from us. And we had also lost the job on American Graffiti to Richard. And so coincidentally, when we were in agony about losing control over this movie, it corresponded time-wise with George saying, hey, guys, I think I can get my movie made, but let's, rewrite the script. And then we sat down with him again and rewrote this 166-page script.
It's interesting because as far as the parallels go, because he had THX 1138, which is kind of an art house science fiction film, and you have this film right around the same time.
Yeah. I think THX was shot in Techniscope, too.
I think you're right, yeah. Was there much, did he offer any, has he ever seen this film that you know of?
I don't
Lucas?
know. I actually don't know if George, we may have sent it up to him.
Well, interestingly, we were talking about the ads promoting from the creators of American Graffiti, or something to that effect, the newspaper ads, which happened. It's one might think that it's a bit of an odd thing that, given the fact that that you were nominated for Academy Awards for that film, for American Graffiti, that this film didn't somehow manage to find its audience, or at least find a distributor that would know how to market it more appropriately, in tune with the Academy Award nominations.
Yeah, I have.
Well, I think it's because the picture is so odd. It's really, looking at it now, it doesn't really quite fit into the mold or the model of the horror exploitation film. It isn't violent enough or probably sexual enough to fit that model. And I think at this time when people were doing horror films, they really weren't thinking about the gore genre. They were really thinking about how to make this creepy and unsettling.
Well, gore movies were around at the time, but this was kind of coming off of a successful wave of horror from, namely the Poe pictures with from Roger Corman, and also, of course, the Hammer films. So that was kind of dictating the taste.
Yeah, I worked at American International Pictures. My first job was as a reader, and they were making all those films. And in fact, I rewrote a Hammer movie. So I was, aware of all those movies.
Which film was that?
I'm trying to remember what they called it. They had a lot of movies, and they just put Poe titles on them. It was something General, Executioner General.
The Witchfinder General?
Witchfinder General. Yeah, I think that was it.
Really?
I think.
That was...
Oh, the girl is my college friend. We were at Berkeley together at the same time. And after Berkeley, she went to Yale Drama School, and so she had done some acting. And also she had written plays. And I think she's pregnant there with her first child.
She became a screenwriter after.
So how...
You mean with the skin? Bud Blood did it,
Without feeling any pain, I ripped it off.
So you did rewrite Witchfinder General?
Yeah.
Conqueror Worm? It was released under both titles, but...
Yeah, I think that was the one.
Yeah, with Vincent Price. It was...
No, the one I did I thought had Karloff in it. But yeah, I was very aware of those films, and I guess this would be before this. I had written, my roommate in when I was at film school was Curtis Hanson, and at the time he was editing his uncle's magazine, which was called Cinema Magazine. Bud ordered them from. There's a scientific, the scientific lab kind of supply house, and you can buy all that stuff for science classes.
So Bud supplied the insects?
I think they were frozen, and then you bring them alive or something. I don't know. The lizards, I guess, he collected on his.
So,
So anyway, I wrote Curtis was editing Cinema Magazine, and he said, this guy named Bogdanovich has made this kind of weird movie called Targets. And so I met Peter, and he was living out in the valley on Satakoy, and we looked at the movie, and I wrote this rave review, and all I remember is that Peter called me and he said, thank you, it's a great review, I really, appreciate it, this will help a lot. And he said, do you want to continue and I said, well, I want to be a screenwriter, and he said, well, your name, though, he said, you're going to have to change your last name because Huyck is very strangely spelled and hard to pronounce.
And
at the time I said, well, Peter, I don't think your last name, Bogdanovich, is exactly easy.
Very true.
Yeah.
Do you remember anything about shooting this scene here?
This is a street that's still there, and it's very close to MGM. The old, I guess it's Sony now. And, we were able to close it late at night and light it. That was a big deal, lighting that street for us.
Did you get the use of the police car?
Yeah, well, we had to rent. The one cop who was shot in the throat was my brother. He also drove the one Winnebago we had for the actors. This is Royal Dano's, I guess, entrance. Now, again, Royal Dano for us was like Elijah Cook Jr. I mean, we had grown up seeing Johnny Guitar and,
Trouble with Harry.
All these great Royal Dano movies. So we were thrilled when we got him to do this.
We actually had some trouble talking him into doing it. I don't think he was that crazy about the script, but our friend Matthew Robbins had used him in his student film. So Matthew called Royal and told him that, he had read the script, he should be in the movie,
we were
et cetera.
Good guys.
Yeah.
And,
We knew what we were doing.
Which we didn't.
How did he react to, he knew he was going to be bathing himself in paint.
Yeah, no, he was really into it, and he was very helpful because Mariana, she plays the film in this whole kind of dreamlike state. Oh, this is the scene where Bill Norton comes up and meets the dark stranger. Royal was very helpful in the scene that's going to be after this with Mariana Hill.
Where was this shot at? Was all this completed? I mean,
yeah, we shot all this. This was out in Malibu or Topanga.
Topanga.
Yeah.
So there's nothing missing from these flashbacks here?
No, not from this, I don't think.
Okay. Apparently, I guess it's because of the bad transfers that are out on the market, but there's ambiguity as to whether or not that's Michael Greer as
it
the
is.
stranger. So,
yeah.
By the way, had you seen Night of the Living Dead?
I've never seen it.
I've seen it. I don't know when I saw it, but...
When the dark stranger said he was spreading this new religion.
This mention of the Donner Party would almost, or the Donner Party reference, rather, and then Royal Dano's reference to the old gods, clinging on to the old gods.
Yeah, that's Lovecraft.
Yeah, exactly.
As he was dying, he told them of the dark stranger. And they assumed
That's the boom man on the right and the...
Michael Katz?
Yeah. And on the left was the loader.
By the way, Michael Katz is no relation to you, is it?
No.
That's Michael Katz. Anyway, in this scene, Royal really grabbed Mariana and shook her around until she got sort of appropriately scared and frightened, thinking he had lost his mind.
You've got to go now. Most of this town is infected. It's got to be destroyed before the moon turns blood red. And he returns to lead them up the coast and inland.
Now he's about to get doused in flames here, per the instructions previously from Elisha Cook, which obviously had to have been, I mean, that had to have been an elaborate thing to shoot, when he ignited in fire.
Yeah, because this was a low-budget film, and a fire stunt was kind of a big deal. And the guy who did it was from a upstart organization called Stunts Unlimited that had broken off from Stuntman Association. And this was his first fire stunt. So this was sort of a training thing for him. So everybody was a little nervous. I think the paint on the face was sort of an homage to Pierre Le Fou, the good artist.
Blue and red again.
Yeah, that's where the sort of Vietnam War theory came from, I guess.
Yeah, the red, white, and blue.
Yeah.
The flag and the burning of the self-sacrifice. Well, but none of that was. There wasn't any Vietnam that.
Not consciously. Obviously, our subconscious was hard at work and came up with this anti-war statement.
This is Royal Dano, sort of, I stress again, very influenced by Pierre Le Fou, because Jean-Paul Belmondo in that film paints his hair blue.
How long did you have a Royal Dano for?
I don't know. I think because he was probably, one of our bigger stars, it was all scheduled so that he only probably worked for a week or something. But I don't really know.
There are these little shock cuts. Well, we get them here with Elisha Cook, but there are those ambiguous little shots of the figures peering in through the ceiling windows.
Yeah, that's to forecast all these. The fact that they are sort of around the house.
So that was your intention to have
that was all. Yeah, that was all cut. I don't know if we actually put in the Royal Dana. I mean the Elisha Cook shots where he says it, or whether you were supposed to just remember.
I'm sure they would probably, if that wasn't cut by you, they probably thought, well, she's going to wonder, or everybody's going to wonder.
How'd she think of that? Yeah. And when he starts patting his hand up and down on the ground, that means get over here and stop this.
What was you said this was shot over a course of about, 2 weeks? Or?
No, 2 months, I
2
think,
months?
probably.
But on independent films, you just, you shoot all hours anytime you want. You're working 16, 17-hour days. You're just trying to hold the crew together, long enough to pay them and feed them.
How much advanced pre-production did you have on this? I mean,
Not a lot, because we were afraid that the money would disappear. So it was put together pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think we did it over like a month or something. We had no time.
Was that corpse? Was that Bud's concoction there?
Probably. Yeah. I think he was the whole special effects department.
Marianna Hill wasn't exactly unknown at this time, although she was actually just about to begin an upward swing with later on with Godfather Part 2 and High Plains Drifter.
Well,
she'd done Star Trek and Outer Limits.
Yeah, but we were thrilled because she had been in Howard Hawks movies. She was in Redline 7000, so that meant a lot to me.
Also, wasn't she in Medium Cool with Haskell Wisconsin's movie?
Yeah, I think she was. Yeah, she did the Western, El Condor.
What was she like to work with?
Oh, she was very sweet. She
Why didn't you leave?
she really saw it as Alice in Wonderland. So I mean, she plays it in sort of this dreamlike kind of way. But she was, very nice, professional.
But everybody on low-budget films just really pulls together because there is no rank.
Time is money, and you're under the gun.
Well, it's not like on a studio movie, when you have these hierarchies and entourages. I mean, it's ridiculous. On a low-budget film, you have nothing.
Did you take away much from working with actors? I mean, in terms of learning how to work with actors?
Oh, sure, it was good.
Yeah, no, it's fabulous experience.
I think the whole town.
Now, I forgot what I was going to say.
See, he's getting it, whatever it is you get.
It's about how I feel.
His ear's bleeding. This is not a good thing.
Oh, that's your quilt.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just don't get it on the quilt, Mariana.
Actually, if he's not feeling well, that's on a suspended bed on chains. It's the worst place to put somebody.
It's very queasy.
There's another thing that came up during that documentary on American Graffiti, the multiple subplot format, which was at that point not very commonplace, and it's now become kind of standard for shows like ER and so forth.
Yeah.
But this story, by comparison, is actually very linear. I mean, you don't have those multiple subplots. At the time, I think in that documentary, it said that you didn't really understand the form, or you weren't aware of it, and that's how it ended up where the...
Well, not really. I mean, there were things that were sort of classical, like La Ronde was a movie that went from character to character to character, and it was based on a play that actually followed syphilis from character to character. But no, we were aware that it was multiple stories. The difference is that American Graffiti, the script was too long for the amount of time and that George had to shoot it and so forth. So it was done very quickly. This script was very short, so because we just couldn't afford to shoot that much.
And we have this really elaborate invasion scene here.
Yeah, this was Stunts Unlimited doing.
So they were supposed to bounce like that?
The what?
What was that? There was something that there was a stuntman. That bounced. The stuntmen, they were good. No, he was supposed to bounce against the wall. Nobody was hurt as far as I can remember. That was the caterer, I think, this girl.
And I noticed the carved chair in the scene is from my grandfather's house.
Yeah. These are the aerospace workers.
So do
they eat their own? Yeah, that's a good question. I guess when they're really hungry. Because, but most of the time it seems like, who are they eating there? That's one of their own, yeah.
Well,
I guess they had to because they ran out of the real thing.
You also pioneered the running zombie, actually.
Yeah.
That didn't come years later until Return of the Living Dead, the Dan O'Bannon version, anyway.
Oh, yeah.
But are they actual? I mean, they're usually referred to as zombies or ghouls. Would that be an appropriate term for them? Because they're actually under if I understand correctly, they're actually under the spell of the Messiah.
Yeah.
Because he's returned as prophesized.
Yeah, I don't. Ghouls to me, I don't know what the official definition is, but are people who eat other people, I guess. But that's cannibal too. So zombie, I always think of sort of being Caribbean and under a spell. So if they are under his spell, you're right. They could be hyphenates. They could be zombie ghouls.
Soundman on the hill.
Yeah.
This is also where the cutting really becomes very rapid because you've got, I mean, throughout a lot of this, you've got the the longer lingering shots, which are really absorbing the scenery, which is really nice. And also, we didn't have avids back then also, where the temptation is to try and do 20 different cuts and see what looks.
No, these were actually cut on moviolas. They
Yeah.
were old-fashioned. We didn't even have flatbeds.
Watching us,
I don't think this came along until a little later.
as if we were trapped
But
Well, they started using flatbeds around here now, but we didn't have them.
I thought it was later. I thought it was in the
Well,
mid-70s.
no, I think on Graffiti they were using flatbeds, weren't they?
the scene right here under the pier, which could have been potentially very dangerous for these two.
Yeah, we had no
We hope to make it
no
to the small
safeguards.
boats on the
And there's a camera person that's actually in water right there.
Somewhere, yeah, in a rowboat or something.
It's an incredibly
He was
still
having
hand that
trouble with
they've
his arm,
got.
Yeah.
Because that's not an easy feat to actually shoot
No,
while
you're right.
on
I don't know what
water.
they're on.
and now I couldn't help him. Boats didn't seem any.
No, they were real troopers in this. I remember. Fortunately, it was summer. Yeah. But the water's still cold in California. That's what people don't realize.
Now is this about where you mentioned the hand, him burning it, or
No, it's later. I think I'll tell you. I think there's the beginning of it. Isn't there a scene at night on the beach? At least, I think there is.
not coming up? Well, we have a quick little insert shot of the blood red moon, which looks like it's
Oh, there's no bonfire or anything.
not from this point. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, there is.'re right.
Yeah, I think there's.
Yeah, there's the
part of the
it's a
scene is there.
flashback scene.
Yeah.
So that's where that.
Yeah, the whole
Okay.
thing.
Pulled me from the water.
Oh no,
I'm
it's gone.
No, it's
no,
it's
no.
in
They
here. I
cut
think-
to it. Yeah.
I think we got caught up in another.
See, yeah, but I'm not sure.
They built their fires.
Yeah, that's right. She's supposed to flash. See, you're not supposed to see that his handprint is on the other side of her face.
They dressed me in an old gown.
And I don't know whether you ever see it in this
I was
version.
to be offered.
But he comes up out of the water, takes her as his bride, and lifts his hand, and Bud
Okay.
Blood did
Here
this
we go.
effect where his hand smokes against her face. Now, I think she yeah, there she is.
Yeah.
And her hair
With
was
her hair.
teased for hours. I don't know if he does it, but he's supposed to come up and...
Knowing that they wouldn't listen. He
Oh,
was
so
right.
that's Scott Conrad, the editor
I made it
later
back.
took over the film and also won
And
an
they
Oscar
put me
for
free.
editing Rocky.
Yes, that's still... Now, this is the only shot that we didn't shoot, really. I mean, that's Scott Conrad and somebody else. And I guess they needed footage because these guys, they cut to us several times. They didn't know what else to do. Or they just wanted themselves in the movie. I don't know.
So is Michael Greer's
Yes.
character supposed to be?
Yes, exactly. Michael Greer is the Dark Stranger. He comes back as... I think.
And here's
Now,
this
these are the
montage.
flashbacks, yeah.
Now, is he aware of that throughout the film, that he's the Dark Stranger, or does
Yes,
he? Okay.
I think that influenced his performance,
Okay.
which is probably why he said he was the son of Satan. Now, on the other side of her face is this horrible scar, but I get this terrible burn.
Each of us dies.
And this goes back to the hall, the way they've...
Right.
I think that was the original idea, was to go back to the hall, but you were supposed to see this burn on the side. Maybe it's... I don't
Wait,
know.
but we're missing the big scene. We're missing
Yeah,
the big scene
when
when
it-
he comes up on the.
Well, he chooses her as his wife, and he burns her face in some symbolic kind of way. And there's supposed to be hundreds, if not thousands, of people on the beach. But
That's
there
where
are-
CGI
There
comes in.
aren't any. Yes, that's right. You could have all kinds of
I,
things.
I do think we shot the burning of the face.
Yeah,
I
we
don't
did.
know-
No,
I don't-
I remember the effect, but I guess they couldn't cut it together.
So you don't really get the idea that Michael Greer takes over Mariana, do you? Without that scene?
Maybe not.
Well, part of one thing that you read the online reviews. One of the things that really charms everyone, myself included, about this is the ambiguity. It's almost hard to determine whether or not a lot of things are just how intentional things are, and it's an open door to a lot of interpretations of various allegories, or there was one review I remember that speculated the blood red moon being a symbol for femininity and the menstrual cycle. He's coming out of the water, childbirth. It was a female reviewer on the net, and it was
Really?
a very elaborate interpretation.
Yeah, Judy gets the credit.
And there's the copyright date of 1973. So,
Yeah.
well,
It took a while to come to the screen, but it was worth the wait.
thank you for listening, everyone.